Hello to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 264 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the number one liberal pundit podcast in Canada. We're recording on October the 19th, 2020. Joining me tonight, we have a triumphant return from Brad. Ian's on, and so is Gavin.
Glad we'd love to hear your feedback about the show. So please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/CBC or CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback. Sorry, my brain is all fried here. Or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. But if you are the CBC or a politician you'd like to tell us what to say, please use those links and send cash. Version of the show is available at Stitcher and iTunes.
You can check the podcast out on Facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast and Instagram at Instagram.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast.
Oh, I made Gavin do that twice. That was terrible of me. We need your help. Find me an intern. We need more money. Support the show. Go to patreon.com/CPP and become a Patreon today. You get a better quality version of the show for just $1 an episode. And I use your $1 to hire somebody to do the show notes because I have failed again. Since we're not really on the 2-show-a-week format anymore because I got chores and stuff to do, but Patreons get early access to the midweek show when we
if and when it happens, yeah.
And I'm able to put it out. So those two things. Show you're not a communist. Buy a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com page and follow the link on the right. And that will take us to my favorite segment. Basically the reason I do this show. I'm going to ask my friends, what are they drinking? We'll go clockwise on my screen like usual, starting in the top right. Gavin, what are you drinking?
I am having some Havana Club and Coke Zero this evening.
All right. Brad, are you drinking?
I am. Yep. I'm having a Alberta Premium and Coke.
Excellent choice.
It's not the cast strength new one that everybody's talking about, but close enough.
From Alberta, it's got to be good.
That's right.
Ian, what are you drinking?
Odd man out tonight. The wage cooking continues. It's iced green tea right now.
Well, something Uber Daddy.
Something, yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. We're drinking for you.
Thanks, appreciate it.
I'm drinking a Saison from Block 3 in St. Jacobs, Ontario. You can taste the Belgian in it.
So it's kind of floral and fruity and...
Yeah, it's kind of floral and fruity and a little bit spicy, and it's not bad. It's like 5%.
That's not bad. Those Belgians, though, can get a little out of hand.
Yeah, Saison's usually not so much. Some of the Belgian, like the Trappist style stuff.
Yeah, the triples and quads is where you start losing me, and it's just the gross.
Holier it is, the higher the alcohol content.
Well, that's because after you drink a few of them, you're praying that the hangover stops and that you'll never drink again. So you're on your knees. Yeah.
Could be. Also remind everybody about the Patriot Challenge. We're asking you to do 5 things every day, make your life a little bit better. Exercise, practice a skill, read a book, drink some water, and complete 1 task to improve your life. And if you're on the socialist media and you haven't been banned multiple times, unlike some of our panelists, you should get the template from the website and tag us in your post so we can repost your post. I'm still not really actually sure how social media works if that's not plainly obvious. But I know how Photoshop works and we built a template, so have at it. Let's do some news. We're going to start with the government being back in session and We Charity not being on the table for discussion. I got a twofer. First one's in CTV News. Liberals NDP vote to shut down Conservatives' renewed push to examine We affair. And also in the National Post, Liberal battle to prevent disclosure of more We documents relies on Liberal battle to prevent disclosure of more We documents relies on pots of coffee and irrelevant speeches. Everybody remembers we broke Parliament. There's not a clear reason yet as to why Parliament was prorogued, but the working theory is likely that it has to do something with the giant scandal involving We Charity and the Student Summer Jobs Program.
Yeah, and multiple people amongst the Liberal Party, not just the one in charge, but him and like at least 3 or 4 other people.
Well, I mean, the previous finance minister stepped down, right? Morneau is no longer finance minister. And wasn't there somebody else that was involved at a high level, like another cabinet level position?
Oh, what's her face? Bardish Chagger. She was definitely part of that.
Thank you.
And I think there was at least one other. Oh no, sorry, I'm thinking of McKay. So not quite a Liberal, but almost.
In everything but name.
Close enough, just like McKay's eyes. Eyes are too close together.
Can't unsee it.
If he can even see anything, I mean.
I'm actually
So,
kind of curious about like
finance
this bromance with the
committee-
Liberals and
sorry.
NDP. Like, how can
Well-
they just shut it down? Like, then no matter what, like if there's criminal wrongdoing, how can they just prevent it from happening? I guess it helps when you know the commissioner of the RCMP, but
Well, I mean, when the commissioner of the RCMP is your friend's wife, your brother-in-law's friend's wife, I forget exactly what Brenda's relationship is to the prime minister, but I feel like it's somebody's college roommate's brother's boyfriend's babysitter. I forget what the relationship there is, but they're involved. 2 different committees this past week were on their Zoom calls, because I guess that's how our government works now. The Finance Committee and one other committee. It's like the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, I think.
Which is not as exciting as it sounds.
oh, wow.
No, but
Whatever you could do, like a drinking game, and every time they say point of order, you could just like take a drink or something.
Yeah.
oh man, you should watch some of the coverage from one of the. I think it was from the Finance Committee.
That's when they
It
shut
might
down
have been-
Polyev.
Well, so they shut down Polyev, which is terrifying. So our pal Pierre twittered about this one. The Liberal chair suddenly and without authority muted the audio and then turned off the Zoom meeting to halt my Finance Committee motion on the Wii cover-up. I'm not sure what part of this is like the most offensive thing the government can do. The fact that we're running the government in the country through Zoom meetings. Or that the chair is just like, yeah, no, we're just not talking about that, and then closes the Zoom call. Right? Like, I'm not sure which
Right.
part of that is the most offensive, but
Yeah.
the Finance Committee meeting went on for ever last week, the end of last week, when they were discussing the We Charity scandal, because they were filibustering for hours. Because that's really all that the Liberals can do at this point, is that they can filibuster. That's
Well, they got a lot of hot air to blow around.
I mean, yes, but I mean, it's also like very close to obstruction, I think.
Well, I mean, any sort of filibustering should be absolutely prohibited because, like, either you have something to say or you don't. And if you have nothing to say, shut up and sit down.
You start a podcast and you drink on Monday nights with. No, that's not it.
Yeah, but people can choose to listen to us or not, and we're not trying to, like, draw out the time so that somebody can't talk about something else. Like, that's ridiculous.
We're also not
Like-
getting paid 6 figures a year to do official business, and yet nothing is getting done. So therefore, there's zero efficiency for the dollar spent, right?
Yeah. Like, I
Very
just don't.
disappointing. So watching them do this filibuster, there were a bunch of point of orders that Ian brought up, which I thought was very entertaining because they had points of orders for their points of orders, which really amounted to nothing and went nowhere, much like the rambling speeches that they were given that had very little to do with the topic that the committee was actually discussing. They just kept going on and on about nothing particularly.
Yeah, and then on
The
top of
piece
that,
with-
the excuse that they're using is we're focusing on COVID. Like, you can
Well,
do
we have to focus on COVID.
two things at once, right?
Yeah.
Well,
What if
you
I
would
told you
think
you
that
could do
when we
both?
have committees to talk about these things, they would discuss that in committees, like much like how we have the COVID committee, because we have a standing committee that deals specifically with COVID. You would think that would be an opportunity for them to discuss things around COVID.
Yeah.
And they can
And
use
then-
things like finance committee to talk about where the money went and why it went to We Charity.
Yeah.
That
And then
seems like it's within the purview of that committee.
And then those committees give reports to the rest of the members of parliament so that they know where they stand and what happened in committee. That's generally how things work, at least when I've been
Well-
in a business sense and had committees that have had to deal with this, that, and everything else.
The difference is that you're talking about a business and we're talking about the government. So for example, one of these things, because I'm sure that people will remember when the Liberals ran 2 elections ago, they were very unhappy that Stephen Harper, the literal devil, Stephen Harper, prorogued Parliament at one point. And the Liberals ran on never proroguing Parliament the same way and never abusing that type of power. And they managed to get through a whole term without doing it.
Yeah, but it's
So,
different when
you know,
they do
golf
it.
clap.
Yeah.
It is different than when they do it, and that's the argument. So, for example, the PROC committee, the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, has declined to provide any documentation around the We Charity because the conservative members of the committee would like to review all of the documents around the We Charity fiasco so that when the prorogation report is published, they have all of the relevant details to make decisions. And the Liberal chair feels that this is premature and unprofessional to ask for this amount of data this early because they're drawing preemptive conclusions.
How dare they want all the facts?
I know, right?
Facts are terribly inconvenient. So
Yeah.
the Prime Minister does owe a document to the House within 20 sitting days of returning after prorogation to explain to Canadians why they felt that they had to prorogue Parliament.
Yeah, but like if it's 20 sitting days, like how often are they sitting? Like once every month?
I think it's
Well,
about 3
I think
years
it's a
at the
little
current
more
rate.
frequently than that,
Yeah.
but
So, I mean, he's got an indefinite amount of time because they can basically suspend Parliament whenever they want under the guise of the coronas.
I am not sure that they can get away with that forever, though, especially when we're running the government through Zoom calls.
Which tells me we're halfway to
like-
running a government.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, you
Now we
remember
just
how
need
you
to
said
get rid
they,
of them.
that they spent 6 figures and didn't do anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we might have narrowed down the reason why.
So, do you think we might be able to get the access code so that we can like log in and then just like have those little flags and just be like slash it, slash it, slash it, just out of nowhere?
We could fix that deficit.
Yeah.
I mean, I could fix that well, I don't know. We're gonna talk about more about deficits in a moment, but I mean, I think the 4 of us drunkenly discussing this for an hour on a Monday night could probably eliminate the deficit with extreme prejudice, which is different than the type of prejudice that our government has.
Well, I mean, they have extreme prejudice, but it's for us, law-abiding gun owners,
And I'm just we
small
just
business
stop
owners.
paying
women
them all
and-
6-figure salaries, and we stop spending my tax dollars. And in fact, for my Corona benefits, we don't even do basic income. I have a better plan than CERB. I have something better than universal basic income.
Flat
The
tax?
government just lets me keep half of my income. That's my whole plan. That's the entire plan. The government just lets me keep the money that I've earned.
Revolutionary.
Interesting.
I'm going to call it stimulus spending
Yeah.
because it's going to stimulate my spending.
Yeah, because you'll actually have money to spend.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be a great way to like keep the economy going and
Yeah.
also not pay these yahoos 6-figure salaries to whatever it is that they do? Go on Zoom calls, I guess.
Yeah.
I am very interested to see what comes out of this because we are owed a report about the prorogation. I'm curious to see what the reasoning is for this, why they prorogued it, and how it is definitely 100% not related to the We Charity scandal.
My guess, though, is that the only thing that you're going to get on it is going to be like a piece of paper with some scribbling on it, and it's going to be like in Austin Powers, and it's just going to be like Squid prorogued, and that's it. It's like,
Yeah.
and everyone's just going to be like, what? And then they'll come up with something else that we need to talk about, so everyone will forget.
Well, other thing we should talk about. Let's do some economics. Let's also remember that I'm not an econ guy. I'm an
But you'd
engineering
still do
guy.
better than the government.
I mean, I know that you don't balance the budget itself. The budget doesn't balance itself. I guess put the
Yeah.
context.
Yeah, we may not be
budget
able to
does not
balance it,
balance
but we at
itself.
least know that it needs to be, and it's not going to do it itself.
I also know that you don't measure success by deficit spending. I also know that the economy is not grown from the heart outward. So I already feel like my understanding of economics is superior to the entire cabinet.
I think the
Yeah.
Bank of Canada would disagree with you, Andrew.
Well, the Bank of Canada would disagree with me, but only to the tune of about $500 billion. It's not that much money, right?
Well, at this point, all you can do is giggle a little bit because I mean, it might as well be a cajillion at this point. I mean,
One, if you can't laugh, we'd all be crying, right?
yeah.
Actually, I shouldn't say that. That's probably 500 billion is probably not the actual right number. I made up a number from something I read, and oh no, I was right. The central bank balance sheet's 540 billion. So I was actually really, really close. So let's talk about what's gone on in 2020 with the way the Bank of Canada has worked, because they've done. They're not calling it this because this is no longer like. Not the nom de plume. What's the French term? The de rigueur? This is not the soup of the day for the term that they use. Once upon a time, we used to call this quantitative easing, where the federal bank would just inject cash into the market in order to stave off economic disaster in the stonk market. The stonks are not doing so good as of late because we've been injecting a vast amount of money.
Well, they used to do a lot of interfering in that, and to like prop up the dollar and fuck with interest rates and all of that stuff.
Well,
and like
they're still propping up the dollar and messing with interest rates, but this
not
year,
like they
since
used
early
to.
This year,
so like as a whole though, they seem to sort of
I'm gonna disagree. Press X to doubt, fam.
well, I mean, this year is different because the money printer is set to, burr. But like for the longest time though, they weren't doing the things that they used to do to control interest rates and stuff like that, like they were historically. But I guess this year they decided to just do the opposite of what they've been doing.
I see what you're saying. From the end of 2010-ish.
Yeah, until
the last
this
big
year.
recession was 2008, right?
Yeah.
And we fared, Canada as a whole fared pretty well through the 2008 world economic recession.
Yeah.
Things were kind of slow, and through 2010, interest rates have been very low, and inflation has not been as high as it has been in years previously, like in the 70s and 80s, through oil crises and other things, because unfortunately we kind of have petrodollars, but not really. This year, however, the Bank of Canada asset growth is almost 450%, which is orders of magnitude higher than it has been for a decade.
Yeah.
Like previously it was measured in like single digits, or in some rare cases double digit growth. This year it's 456%, and we're talking about like since from March till now, we're talking about an 8-month window.
Well, and of course, a lot of people just say, well, other countries have gone into debt as well, but not to the same level as us, right?
It's not to the same level as us, and the quantitative easing, although that is not what they're calling it, the quantitative easing is what is really making this much worse than it appears to be. because we're injecting more money into the economy, devaluing the existing money in the economy. The way that the asset sheet works, the Bank of Canada has bought all of these T-bills, and there's some other government liability that they purchase. Bonds, I think Canada bonds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the Bank of Canada is buying bonds from the government, propping up its asset sheet, which is allowing them to keep the central bank benchmark interest rate at 0.25%, which means that they hopefully keep the inflation around the 2% target that they have.
Well, and normally they don't have to buy the bonds unless nobody else wants them. So in the
And
good
I
old
think
days,
that's the problem now, is that nobody is buying government bonds, and also we're propping those up with treasury bills on top of.
yeah, so you can expect a credit rating degrade from Moody's or whoever you care to look at. This time next year, we'll have like a B, maybe triple C. I don't know. Credit rating.
I'm expecting we get into some sort of a C rating by next year. The way that this is going, we have not spent money like this
Ever.
Yeah.
Well,
We've
since
spent
March,
more money this year than we spent on World War II, which was our largest period of spending as a country. Like from 1867 till 2020, the largest 5-year spend we had was World War II.
well, he's done one better now. He's actually managed to spend more than every other prime minister combined.
I mean, I guess it's a record.
Okay.
You get a trophy.
You're number one.
Yeah. Number one
baby.
by a long shot.
Yeah, more spending than every other prime minister. More quantitative easing than any other government, federal government in Canada. Not generic government, small g, like our government, big G.
And then they spin it like it's to our benefit, right?
Well, of course.
Well, I mean, they
they
took on the
this
debt so that we didn't have
to.
to.
Exactly.
Or even better, they spend it overseas.
Well, that's why we borrowed all of this money, is so that we can give it to developing nations that need signs to tell them not to poop on beaches.
Or the WHO, like $850 million straight to the WHO just for shits and giggles.
Mm-hmm.
I love their music, though.
Yeah, it's totally worth it.
Bob O'Reilly.
They're the
man,
ones that say
music
we'll get
actors.
fooled again, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If only we wouldn't get fooled again. But no, idiots will still go and vote for Trudeau.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unprecedented levels of government spending, which is deeply concerning, deeply upsetting, but I really don't think there's much to be done about it. Just what the current government is going to do, because they're going to keep trying to spend their way into prosperity. And unfortunately, like you guys said, money printer go burr.
Yeah.
And for the most part,
millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, it's been all, depending on what you believe, I guess. I think it's all been unnecessary to a greater degree, right? Now, should they have known that from the beginning? I don't know. Nobody really knew what we were dealing with coronavirus when it first started. But I mean, you take a look at some examples from other countries that didn't do total lockdowns or did less or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
I really am disappointed that they didn't do the lockdown the way that, like, a lockdown should actually work. Like, lock the doors, turn off the travel, tell everybody to stay home for 2 weeks.
perfect.
If that's what the WHO says, then okay. But you watch Flight Radar, like I do. Like, I have a Flight Radar screen up because of the industry that I work in. I deal with airlines. I watch airplanes all day. And I watch airplanes every day landing in Toronto from mainland China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They've been doing it every day for the whole year. There's less of them, sure, but that's not a lockdown. That's not restricting international travel. That's not restricting interprovincial travel. I have a bunch of people that work for me that travel all over the country working on stuff, and we have every freaking exemption you can get for the Corona thing because we're all essential. And so is every partner company we work with, and so is every customer company we work with, and so is every supplier and vendor we work with.
And so is pretty much everyone else that doesn't cut hair.
But that's what I mean. Like, unless you work in like fast food or personal services type stuff.
But
Okay, so
even
restaurants were kind of closed for a little bit, so waiters couldn't work. People that could cut hair couldn't do it. But even the Tim Hortons kids were still at Tim Hortons doing drive-through coffees.
Yep, my daughter was essential all the way through.
well,
I mean, like,
Right up until
everybody's
the end.
essential. Everybody gets an exemption. And I get that up to a point. Like, we can't just tell people because Canadians are woefully underprepared on the whole. This is Ian's opportunity to make a plug about another podcast.
Yeah, check
But
out
we
Canadian
can't
Prep-
just lock people in their houses for 2 weeks and tell them to stay home because they'll all die because they don't have the food. Or they don't have the money to be ahead because if they don't work for 2 weeks, they're all going to go bankrupt and the banks will take their homes, or all of these other things, because we are just not a very well-prepared or very self-reliant society, which is incredibly upsetting, but it is the way it is.
well, by design, because if we weren't, like, we wouldn't need government at all. Like,
Yeah.
Well, they want you married to the
Well,
state, not to each other.
Yeah.
I
right?
still argue that we don't need the government at all, but most
Yeah, but-
people wouldn't be able to stay in their home for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Never mind the essentialness of their job or that they're actually someone that is making a meaningful contribution to society, say a police officer or a physician, somebody who actually needs to see and work with people in order for successful outcomes to happen. You couldn't just lock everybody in their house for 2 weeks because they would all die or be bankrupt. Like they would starve to death or they would run out of money.
And certainly riot in the streets beforehand.
I don't know that your average Canadian would. I mean, I'm sure in downtown Toronto, but downtown Toronto looks for any excuse for a good riot. Ah, it's Tuesday afternoon. We better go have a riot, everybody. Make sure to bring your illegal handguns.
Bought with CERB money.
yeah,
Well, I mean, that's what I spent my CERB money on.
Yeah, of course.
Saying that's not what I was supposed to do with that. I mean,
if I got any CERB money, it would have been spent on nods, but I didn't. So
yeah, I didn't get the CRB money either, but we didn't do the lockdown, and that was my big point. Was that if we were a serious country with a serious government and serious people, which we are none of those things, we would have actually locked the country down, told everybody to stay the F home, and then we would have been very particular about letting people travel and opening the borders. And yeah, there's probably like somebody on the internet who's gonna call me a Nazi now because like I sound like the Gestapo and I'm asking people for their papers, please. But if you want to have a lockdown, that's how you have a lockdown.
yeah, I mean,
You have
if
to
we'd actually
Literally
done
do
it,
what it says.
yeah, and if we'd actually done a lockdown, we wouldn't be in to like month 6 of 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? Like we would have been through it all and it's done. And we could have all gone back to normal after 2 weeks instead of living through hell now for 6+ months and not having any clue as to when this is going to be over. Like I'm getting tired
It's
of
not
this.
going to be over. It's not going to be over. This is, well, or it might be over in 17 days at the end of the U.S. election.
Yeah.
Or it might be much, much worse.
They just keep moving the
Depends
bar
on who wins.
all the time.
Yeah.
Well, and we don't know how long does the virus last on surfaces because the WHO and the CDC keep changing their minds about how long the virus lasts for and how the virus is transmitted and whether you can do asymptomatic transmission or not. Or now in Ontario, we have if you're an asymptomatic person and you think you might have the Rona, you can go get a Rona test at your local pharmacy. Okay, so are asymptomatic people a problem or are they not? Because, like, can we not pick one? I realize that medicine and science changes over time and we learn things as we go through this, but, like, what we're talking about this week and what we talked about last week are vastly different pieces of information.
Yeah.
The information we have might evolve or change, but I don't think it changes at the rate that we're being told that it does. Is that it seems like it's just the thing that they need to keep at the front of the news cycle, which makes me wonder what they're not putting at the front of the news cycle. If the Rona is the big deal, what are the things that we're not talking about? And also, why is it $500 billion of debt?
Yeah.
Do something completely different, but also the same. Another enraging thing. the real reason that Brad is on tonight. Somehow, and this is completely my fault, we missed the government's official response to E2341 in the summer.
Yeah, they
Probably
had.
'cause we were too busy bitching about the coronas. Yeah.
They did have a response. I forget which day it came out, but if you go on the petition website, they have an initial response, which they did within their time frame. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, there's another response from Joel Lightbound. And yeah, I didn't even realize. I saw what you posted, and I'm like, oh, I checked it out, and it's like I started the petition. You'd think somehow I would be informed of it, but no.
Yeah, you think he would have said
You would
something
think that
to
you would be
you?
able to get notifications, like
You'd
on
think.
the website, like, hey, you not only signed this petition that the government responded to, you started this petition that the government responded to. Here's the response.
No.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, he could have said, like, "Dear Brad, F you." Sincerely, like,
Hugs and kisses. Joel.
like that would have been the professional thing to do, right?
Yeah.
We'll take what you said
Sounds
under
sad.
advisement.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it for fuck's sake? Is it possessive? It needs to sound professional when I write it. Where do
Yeah.
you put the apostrophe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I read it over, and of course, it's all the same talking
Of course,
points.
it's the
But what I
And the CSSA freaked everybody out last week about this. There are
There
Middle
are
of
new
last
gun
week-
bans coming.
new
Well,
gun
yeah,
bans. The new gun bans are yeah. So the middle of last week, the CSSA comes out because they were the ones where I realized that we had another response to the petition.
Yeah.
Like an actual response, not the minister or the.
I think we kind of briefly discussed it, not on air, but amongst ourselves, because like it came out and the response, like the original official response was the same nonsense that it's always been and like that we expected.
The government recognizes that gun violence is an increasingly important and blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah.
They don't say anything.
we as Canadians know.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
yeah, it's all the same talking points. But having read through it, and we all know, like when the OIC dropped, it was like a nuclear bomb, right? And everybody's trying to disseminate all this information and stuff. And I think what a lot of people forgot in that is a section in the OIC that says basically at any time we can decide if a gun is selling well, we
Yeah.
can ban it.
Yeah.
And
Well, I guess that's section 117.15 of the criminal code, right? That's the authority of the parliament to change classification of firearms. That's the section of particular interest.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the actual OIC, it has the, whatever term they use, the market displacement or whatever, right? If it was going to take the place of a banned gun, then we can just decide. And there's so many new firearms coming out on the market right now. And there's no definition that's set out other than sales.
Yeah.
So there's all these, go ahead.
Well,
I was gonna say, yet the Bren 2 MS didn't even last a day on the market before it was banned.
well, yeah, like that, or like the the new B&T, or like a bunch of other things that have just come out that weren't available in the Canadian market May 1st, 2020, but are. It's I mean, people are buying them because that's all they can get. I mean,
Well, this is part of the problem with the way that the firearms are regulated, right? Because if we're doing it based on the sales, whatever is not prohibited is going to be the thing that people buy.
weird. It's funny how that works.
Almost seems like a death cycle of firearms, or death spiral.
Well, let's look into the things that are prohibited from the response from Mr. Joel. The affected firearms have semi-automatic actions which with sustained rapid-fire capability, tactical military design with a large magazine capacity. So we should probably just debunk that because if it's semi-automatic and it's center fire in this country, how many rounds can be in the magazine?
5.
Yeah, it's definitely 5. So what is a large magazine capacity if the law limits you to 5? Is it 5?
Five is a large magazine capacity if you are a liberal anti-gunner.
And what would be a small magazine capacity? Anything less than 5?
Well, 50 Beowulf, they limited to 2, so
Yeah.
there.
Well, not getting autistic about people that have found creative ways to not follow the spirit of the law while still following the letter of the law, which is the part that you have to follow.
Yeah, it's kind of the important part, yeah.
So, if it's based on semi-automatic guns, why were a number of hunting rifles in boutique calibers like 460 Rigby, elephant guns in effect, prohibited under the Ordering Council? Because they are 100% not semi-automatic. So
Yeah,
why
I
is
don't
that
think I would.
elephant
Yeah,
gun
my
been
458 Win Mag would not want a semi-auto version of that because I would have no shoulder left.
Flare
Right,
launchers.
so you're
Same
a very
thing.
boutique, unusual, single shot, 50 caliber rifles and your boutique hunting guns and all of these other not semi-automatic rifles that were impacted. And also the large capacity magazine issue, because 5 round magazines is kind of the law. Also, we'll get into the next point, are of modern design. Somebody want to tell me when the AR-15 was introduced by Stoner?
Yeah.
62 or 3, yeah.
I think it was 1957.
Really?
Maybe that's the AR-10.
But either way, like, is that modern?
Well, that's
mean,
my point. Is that
where's the
50-year-old
date?
rifle design?
Yeah. What other piece of
modern rifle
machinery,
design?
what other tool would you say, oh, yeah, it was developed in the 60s. It's modern,
Yeah,
right?
Right?
certainly
Like,
not a
the
computer.
AR-15 is a 60-plus-year-old design. So, is that modern? Because that doesn't seem... I mean, it doesn't seem modern. I don't drive a car from the 60s because those are not modern. I don't have a washing machine from the 60s because those are not modern. I mean, like, by any benchmark that I can think of, that is not the cutting edge of technology. The exception to that is maybe like the Canadian Forces weapons procurement system, because we get like Cormorant helicopters from like the 60s, and that is the bleeding edge.
Well, but I mean, even then, so if modern design is the thing, and we figured on a date like a Browning X-Bolt, I mean that's modern, right?
Right. So this I mean, this is intentionally vague and misleading language, I think. And then
Shocking.
their third point is present in large volumes in the Canadian market, which I don't know. Trying not to double think too hard on this, but if it's dangerous, does it matter how many of them there are?
Well, I mean, but you know, like we kind of said at the beginning of this whole thing, like if you keep making the pool of legal options smaller, the volume of those things is going to go up because that's all you have left.
I feel like their entire 3 points that they base this around for Section 117.15 are intentionally vague and misleading.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And when they're talking about volumes, I mean, with the original OIC, with the SIGs, what kind of volume were they looking at? Like 1,300 for one of them in the whole country?
Yeah.
So if it's based on volume,
Not there, yeah. Like a
Everything's-
$4,000 rifle, no one's spending a ton of money on it.
Yeah.
Like,
Everything's
there
fair.
are going to be, you know, the SKS, hundreds and thousands of those things out there easily, but somehow they didn't make it on there.
Well, maybe that's what year was into the SKS? Well, that was like 54.
No, actually, believe it or not, they were president in 45.
Well, maybe that's what it is. It's like it's 1950 is the cutoff, right? Like anything before that is antique. Anything after that is modern.
Okay. They changed arsenals in 54. My mistake. Okay,
But, like-
so the Tula SKS is from 45. So does that mean that anything pre-1945 is not a modern design?
I mean, who knows, right? Like
I mean,
that's the
it's all made up
problem.
nonsense, and it doesn't really matter. I just
But that's the thing. Like, if
the
they're going to
the
have
lack
an
of
arbitrary thing, at least have an arbitrary date where it's like, this is when something is considered modern, and this is so. At least it's not like completely subjective.
that's kind of my point that I'm driving at, is that this is all made up and the points don't matter, but at least we could write
Yeah.
down what the rules are. That would be a start.
Yeah, like the arbitrary 10,000 joules of muzzle energy or 20 millimeters bore diameter. At least they gave you an exact, right? Like,
But even that's not exact because the joules thing was capable of and defined capable of.
well, yeah,
You know-
but at least that's still a measurable thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's vague in the way that they've said you achieve that 1,000 joules, but at least it's like, okay, if it's capable of 10,000, which some things are absolutely not, unless it's like it's capable of it one time and then it blows up and it's dangerous to you,
The old proof loads, yeah.
then, sure. But like certain things get near that and they're like, oh yeah, you could do it to that all day, every day, and it would not blow up in your hand. It's just not advised because your barrel life is going to be, severely reduced or whatever it is. But like, at least there's a number attached to that. But if it's going to be modern design, there needs to be a date, like an exact date to say this is when it's modern, this is when it's not. Otherwise, it's so subjective.
Yeah, they do that on purpose, though.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Well, of course they had. And if we lived in a serious country, this would be done based on technical characteristics and by people that understood how to write good law. This law is being written poorly on purpose by people from the Coalition for Gun Control that are giving liberal cabinet ministers their talking points, just like they did in 95. Or,
yeah.
I should say, like they allegedly did in 95, because I can't prove it. Although, Dennis Young probably can, and tune in when I get to read the rest of his work, because I think that we might have paperwork saying that the Coalition for Gun Control actually authored C-68.
Wouldn't be surprised.
I'd just like them to be intellectually honest about what they're doing and why. It's like how, I mean,
Right.
the last 4 or 5 paragraphs of Mr. Joel's response here is that the government is giving all of these agencies and municipal services and provinces and territories funding for the take action against gun and gang violence. So they're giving out hundreds of millions of dollars to the RCMP and the CBSA and various police agencies across the country, following cuts that were made by the evil conservative under Stephen Harper. But they don't do anything to actually address how they're going to deal with any of the gun or gang violence. They
Well,
just
that-
address
I
how
mean,
they're going to take away my legally owned guns.
They did the same thing though with like C-71, where they're like, oh, we're going to make it so that these gun owners can't take their guns to the grocery stores anymore, because when Harper got rid of the ATTs, and you're like, no, that's not what happened at all. He got rid of having to have a separate magical piece of paper. You still can't take it anywhere that you weren't supposed to take it to begin with. You just don't need a separate piece of paper. Like, they're manipulating the truth into making it look like, yeah, they did some evil thing, and it's like, yeah, you made cuts, but like the cuts that needed to happen, and they weren't going to anything good. They weren't helping anything.
I'm actually kind of disappointed that not once in this final few paragraphs did they mention diversity or gender-based analysis.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry. I think that's going to be coming as we see more, whatever the next steps in the gun bans are. I think we're going to see a lot of this being that we need to have central storage because domestic violence, because guns in homes end up with women being shot, or people who identify as women being shot.
Yeah, I'm just worried that one day Angela's going to shoot me with her AR.
I would be worried if I were you too. You can be a handful.
It's true.
I'd be worried about my spouse, but I know where the keys are and she doesn't, so.
Well, you're good then. I mean, technically you're obeying the law because those firearms are registered to you and not to her.
No. Her AR and my AR are cohabitated. They live in the same safe.
Well, there you go.
Well, it's a tax break. It's a marriage of convenience.
Well, that's good. I mean, as long as they took advantage of that, there's nothing wrong with that.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about with this? I'm disappointed that we missed the initial response because it was kind of a nothing burger, and then there was this update that I never saw as an update.
Well, I think that
thought
seems
was
to
best.
be the liberal sort of the MO, right? Like, drop it and run and hope that no one sees it. Like, how many bills have they done that way? Like, the stimulus bill that they did.
It's almost like this book that we read recently where they go back and they alter the documents after the fact, and then
And
that's
that
just
becomes
how
the
the
new
document's
truth.
always been. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
I mean, like,
that's the way the document's always been.
like C-71 was dropped like on a Friday, and then like C-75 was like the week later when it was like a long weekend or something, and it's just like right at the end of the workday, they're like the last second they could possibly hand something in to have it be handed in. It's like, and here we go, and then they run, and it's the same thing with this. It's like they pass the bill or they pass the whole order in council thing like while the petition hasn't been presented yet, telling them you can't do it this way. They do it this way anyways. He tries to bring it up and read it in the thing, and then like, well, we can't talk about this. It's the coronas. So then like the official announcement comes out. They don't make a big deal about it at all and let it fly under the radar. And then some other idiot goes and makes a second thing, and they don't really do anything about it and just kind of try to fly under the radar. Like that's what they're doing. Just
I
because then
continue
it's
to be
too late.
disappointed by our government.
Yeah. 260 something episodes in, we are still angry at you.
264. That's a lot of beer. I've drank a lot of beer.
We
and I've
should
been
send them
very
a bill.
annoyed with our government. Well, maybe. I don't know. I think we can probably wrap that up. Let's remind everybody about book club. I just alluded to we recently talked about 1984. October is going to be Left of Bang. How the Marine Corps Combat Hunter Program Can Save Your Life. That's by Patrick Van Horn. And November is going to be our favorite clinical psychologist, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. And if you follow our links in the show notes, go to Amazon, you buy the book, and we get a little kickback from Amazon for that. Also, if you want an official Big Luau shirt, it's getting a little bit chilly, but I don't know.
I can remember those, warmer days. Yeah.
Buy it a couple sizes too large and wear it over your winter jacket for your upcoming IDPA matches.
Yep. Looking forward to those.
We'll go around. Gavin, where can everybody find you on the internet?
The best place you can find me on the internet is still on the Instagrams. However, don't look for Urbex_GTA because that got zucked, and I still don't know why. You're going to have to look for me at Urbex GTA, all one word. So I'm starting from scratch, but the content will be just as good, I promise, because it's being recycled until I get new stuff. So just, like and subscribe. Do it.
Brad, have you got a internet personality?
No, not really. Social media I'm on, I'm just Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. It's all my name, Brad Manesiak. Just do a search for me and look me up.
All right. Ian, where can everybody find you?
Well, you can email me at thewesternretreat@gmail.com, and you can also find me recording Canadian Prepper Podcast on Sunday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and the Facebooks.
If you've listened to this whole show, you deserve a discount code at Ragnarok Tactical. Use the discount code Patriot at checkout. Save yourself some money. And we do $10 flat rate shipping on everything all the time. I can't do free shipping, but flat rate shipping's pretty good. I have to apologize to Rod. We couldn't fit Rod and Brad on the show. Only one mega personality at a time.
Yeah.
Brad is a big deal. He has authored far more petitions than Rod has. We'll do our very best to get Rod into the show next week.
Try and keep up, Rod.
Yeah.
Slacking.
What has he done lately, really?
And I want to remind all of our listeners out there in podcast land that you are the true North. Strong and free.